And we are back. I think it's one of those times when you're in life and you're starting to wonder if you've done this before, and you're like, I think I've done this before. I hope the microphone's on. I hope the camera still works. I gotta be honest. Mine has cobwebs on it. Your guys's doesn't. You've been grinding through the off season, going through the trades, and I've took some time off. So hand up. I'm back. I didn't go nowhere. Still a Reds fan. And I'm hoping tonight, Nick, if anything, by the end of the night, I have around opening day, you have really no matter the situation, you have just these glorious hopes that may be realistic, maybe they don't, but it doesn't matter. It's part of being a fan. I was nowhere near that around Christmas. And then I've realized as we've gotten closer to opening day, I'm almost there. Because CES is back. It's not just me. CES is back. McLean's back. Maybe Marte, I won't go there yet. But Nick, I'll ask you how you're doing. It's nice to be back on Chatterbox Reds, and we'll get to some stuff here in a minute.
I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. I don't know about the rest of us.
Just the headphones aren't working, so I wasn't sure on what would happen here when we got going. But no, it's good to have you back. You're going through the cycle of a lot of Reds fans. For some godforsaken reason, I'm able to kind of ride the waves, but it happens every offseason. You have these high expectations of what the Reds are going to do in the offseason, and then the Reds don't meet it, and everyone's mad and angry, and then they start seeing the pitchers and catchers report, and they go, oh, you know what, maybe, and in 2 weeks, everyone's going to be all the way back. Then there'll be an injury in spring training, and everyone will fall back off the wagon, and then they'll kind of meet in the middle on opening day.
Yeah, and the questions are already pouring in. Did I fix my drywall yet? Where's the basketball goal? All these things. Yes, I have a plain wall behind me. I have some plans, and I promise by opening day. Weirdly enough, though, Nick, opening day isn't even going to be the stream really that we get to probably showcase it, because we're always doing something somewhere else. But maybe that opening night, I think is what they call it. I'll have this thing in its glorious version of a different version of basically my setup. So a lot of the things that maybe you're used to will still exist, just in a little bit of a different way. But Nick, you obviously have poured a lot of content over the past, call it 2 to 3 months. The Reds have made some moves despite, some of the fan base feeling like they've not done enough. And let's be fair. The direction of this show is more or less going to be predicated upon, maybe stream of consciousness at times. It's also going to be predicated on just kind of the overarching idea of what we are planning to do with Chatterbox Reds this coming season. For many that have followed what we do since the beginning, this isn't really going to be breaking news, but we still plan to go live, for all 162, ninth inning. Here we are. More times than not, it's going to be me and you. But we've had somebody that's helped us quite significantly over the past, year and a half, really. And just so happened to obviously pick up the Bengals coverage with Craig Sandlin. So just to kind of jump ahead of this thing and get into, what this season looks like. You, me, we both have, families, little kids. It doesn't mean we're going anywhere. I don't want people to think that, we don't love what we're doing, but we're probably going to have to take a weekend off here and there just to make sure that, we can continue to try to be good parents throughout the summer. And more or less, we're going to have some help when it comes to this show on the weekends. Down the stretch of baseball at the beginning of the season, we're probably going to still stick it out, obviously, and do the weekends. But point is sometimes throughout the middle of the summer, there's a good chance that we are going to ask for some help. One of the people that help us a lot, I'll just bring him on now because he's obviously been a big part of this show in the offseason, is Craig Sandlin. Craig, you obviously heard us here chit-chat back and forth. I'll ask you, I guess, how you're doing, because that's just what the prototypical host does. They don't really care. I'm not saying I don't care. I'm just saying I got to ask you how you're doing because you're coming on the show. So here it goes. Craig, how you doing? You look good, by the way. I really like the backdrop. It's big league. And, hey, welcome to Red season. Hopefully it's a little bit better than the Bengals.
Whew. I sure hope so, but I'm doing good. Was wishing for a better game in the Super Bowl yesterday, but it is officially Red season. Good to see a lot of the photos and videos come out from the Reds account and other accounts throughout today. Really getting the vibes going here in February. So a little early birthday present for me with pitchers and catchers reporting. Birthday tomorrow, so it's a good week for me, Trace. Good week for me. I say.
Yeah, listen, pitchers and catchers report. Nick, graphic comes out. You see it. Reds put out a little hype video. What was it, yesterday or the day before with Tito? And you can kind of tell that the vibes are starting to shift towards basically what opening day should be. And in Cincinnati, clearly it's different than the vast majority of the league. And I think that thankfully we savor in that. And I appreciate the fact that we have this tradition. Certainly hope we start to have some more traditions towards the end of the season. It's not just this one big party we have every year on opening day, and then that's that. But point is, as we get closer to opening day, kind of any overarching thoughts that have
is that the greatest comment you've ever seen?
Yeah,
sorry,
knows,
I had
at this point. No, at this point, honestly, the whole AI thing, I've come to realize that I've gotten old. You know, I don't know when it happened, but there are just certain things that are happening throughout my life now that I've come to realize that I'm very much like my grandparents when I was a kid. And I used to think, man, they're just old. Why don't they like this? They're just old. One, I don't order pizza online. Okay. I have to call the place. Okay. All these people that want to order it online, they're like, oh, yeah, let me pull my phone out. Hey, what do you guys want? I'm like, just call them up and tell them what you want. Why do we have to sit here and peck around on a keyboard to tell people what we want for some food? That's number one. Number two is AI. I've got no clue what the hell AI is going to end up being. I know they say it's the future. I openly and transparently say, I don't get it. And I'm sure when I'm 90 years old, if I live to be that old, I'll probably be in a state of mind that is it's not very good anyways. But I'm hopeful that maybe that'll help me in my life. But right now I have no clue what AI even really is all about. Yeah, I mean, hey, Mr. Juan, nice to see you. Hope you're still a big fan. And, you know, listen, I know we're shading. Listen, half the comments are a lot of shade. Half the comments are like, wow, Trace is back. Yeah, I've been gone a while. So be it. All right. You know, you ever heard of like, let me think here. Nick Senzel, you know, you know, our fan base should be used to guys being gone for a while and coming back. Okay. Now the big question is am I still going to be what I used to be? That's the question. I don't know. Time will tell.
What a rant, Nick. I don't even, was there a question in there or was that just like,
no, there's no question. And part of me as the host here, I'm trying to figure out what the hell we want to talk about because
I do appreciate the comment that you're missing out on a lot of loyalty points. The only reason I download any of the apps nowadays is because of the special deals that they have going on. You probably still flip through the newspaper to find those deals, don't you?
Oh yeah. See, yeah. I mean, okay. Yeah, I'm an old person. I get it. I know I am. I get it. You know, even I check out. They're like, hey, do you have would you like no free ads? Would you like a Speedy Rewards? I'm like, no. Do I want to punch in my Speedy Rewards number so I can get a free coffee every 20 times I come here? No. I value my time more than have to punch in my phone number and go through your loyalty program. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, I know Nick, not a big fan of that because he's a big value guy.
I'll spend 40 minutes to save 30 cents.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that firsthand.
My wife makes fun of me because like after my daughter gets done with swim lessons, I'll get on the app because I know she wants McDonald's after swim lessons every weekend. I'll get on the app and it takes me longer to order than it would take me to drive there, pick it up and come back.
Exactly.
But gotta get my points.
No.
Half the time it feels like I'm getting the Happy Meal for free because we've accumulated so many points in the different deals. So you say what you want, Trace. Nick and I will save our money. It must be nice to have enough money to not have to worry about searching for those deals. Let me just say, you know, Nick and I, we got to worry about those deals and save every penny we can.
Oh yeah,
it's nice of you to not have to worry about that. I feel bad for you.
Yeah, I mean, we have to do podcasts when the Reds sign Alex Young just to pay the bill.
Speaking of Alex Young, non-roster invitee, Trace, how we feeling?
Listen, this is where I'm going to try my hardest because I told myself before I came down here, let's be positive. Let's keep a narrow focus on opening day. Let's think about all the things that could go right. And let's just keep our head on a swivel when it comes to maybe some things that can go bad. But at the same time, let's not just plan on it. Two things. If Alex Young throws more than 40 innings this year, I am going to be severely disappointed. Largely because there are times in my life where I think, yep, that ship has sailed. It's kind of like when we signed another guy named Tucker Barnhart to a minor league contract, and I thought I was done with this, okay? But no, here we go again. Hopefully that's not a storyline in 2025. Speaking of storylines in 2025, to get to it before we get into the show here really quickly, is Craig's obviously going to jump on from time to time throughout the season, clearly. But we also are going to ask some people that aren't really a part of our inner circle at the very moment to see if they want to be a part of what we're doing. So we are going to put out a post, probably either post-show or tomorrow, that is geared towards some weekend-type hosts from time to time. And we're going to have, tryouts, some non-roster invitees. You know what I'm saying? That's what we're going to do for Chatterbox Reds. Maybe we'll hit a home run. Maybe we'll hit a home run. Maybe
Brandon Drury.
Maybe Drury. Yeah. Maybe we'll pick up Will Myers. Will Myers wasn't a non-roster invitee, but you get the point. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it'll work out. Maybe it won't. But we're going to do some tryouts here throughout the spring training time frame. And hopefully by, we'll call it the end of April, May, we'll be a well-oiled machine. But most importantly, guys, I think the goal is what we've always done. It's to be timely, try to provide as much insightful information as we possibly can. But more importantly, maybe the most important thing is to still come at this thing as an aspect of being a fan, because that's who we are. I mean, yes, as we've progressed and as the show has gotten larger, we've gotten more and more opportunities to do things that maybe are closer to the journalism thing. And I put that kind of in quotes. I still think that what we do and when we're at our best is we are just fans, and we are trying to lay out as much knowledgeable information as possible, but we still have the same heart, the same feeling, the same passion that everyone else has when they watch these games. So nothing really changes with this podcast other than maybe just some new faces from time to time and some workloads on the weekends in the summer. So outside of that, Nick, Craig, I don't know if we have some topics of conversation that we want to go into or what we want to run through, but for the most part, pitchers and catchers report, I guess we can just have fun.
We have
Chase
an early
Burns
nomination
looked great
from
today, right? Chase Burns, best shape of his life.
Oh, everybody's in the best shape of their life. Trust me. But I listen, I said at the time when they drafted Chase Burns, they had obviously a choice to make. We all know the choice they had to make. I'm not going to get an ad nauseum about whether or not who they should have taken. But they decided to take, in my opinion, the guy that was probably the lower or the higher floor, I guess, if we always use the ceiling and the floor analogy. It's a higher floor. I think it's really hard for me not to see him be in a big league uniform within at least a year. I'm not saying it's this year, but within a year, just because he's got stuff that can play in a bullpen. And I know we probably didn't take a guy 2 overall to stick him in the bullpen forever. But if you're looking for a guy that can make an impact towards the back end of the season, and everybody's pointing already towards, where's the downgrade? Because I've seen everyone say, oh, there's upgrades on this team, right? I mean, there's upgrades here, there's upgrades here, there's upgrades here. Why do I feel so bad? I'll openly admit, hand up right now, the bullpen's probably an area that I would say, hey, let's wait and see. That could be where we take a pretty sizable step back. Let's just say, for instance, it's average. A guy like Chase Burns could make a difference towards the end of the season. So, I'm high on Chase Burns, and I know that people aren't pleased with that pick, but we'll see. Time will tell.
I mean, out of the three, I don't think there's any argument that in 2025, Chase Burns has by far the highest ability to help a team in 2025. Condon, you don't want to put a whole lot of stock in their first season, but he struggled in A-ball, and that could just be a first-year struggle. But he clearly is nowhere to be found. I got to see Bazan a couple times. I saw him hit a moonshot, but other than that, he looked pretty lost every at-bat. So I don't see either one of those guys helping out the Rockies or the Guardians in 2025. Maybe I'll be wrong on that, but I think Burns, he's like the real wild card this year. Because I think there's a chance he makes starts. It just depends. It depends on mostly probably how healthy the starting pitching staff is. I don't think they're going to, force him into the rotation, but if there's an opportunity and he looks decent, I don't see any reason why the Reds are going to hold him down.
I mean, given the depth chart, again, so much of it relies on health and what the Reds decide to do with guys like Nick Martinez, but don't be surprised if you see Chase Burns before you see Rhett Lauder this year. And I don't know that people are going to want to hear that, but like if the rotation is healthy and guys are able to go deep into the season before they have to get time off, don't be surprised if Chase Burns is one of the guys that the Reds turn to before they turn to Rhett Lauder, because Rhett Lauder is not a guarantee to make this opening day roster, despite how good he looked at the end of last season. You've got guys like Hunter Green, Brady Singer, Andrew Abbott, Wade Miley, Nick Martinez, Lodolo, all ahead of him already. It's yet to be seen what this team expects or wants to see out of Graham Ashcraft this year. All of those guys could potentially be ahead of Rhett Lauder on this depth chart. And then you've got a guy like Chase Burns who's coming right up behind him. I know people were kind of questioning the pick at the time, but he had the best fastball in college baseball. He was pro ready in many people's eyes. I don't expect him to make the opening day roster by any means, but don't expect to see him before September call-ups. I think there's a chance that he still contributes to this team in 2025.
I mean, listen, he's been a top arm since he left high school. I mean, when he left high school, he went to Tennessee as a freshman, was one of their top arms. We all know how good of a program Tennessee is. Obviously, he left Tennessee. There's speculation as to why he left Tennessee. Who cares, really? At the end of the day, he's an adult now. Hopefully, he's mature and not, a 19-year-old kid, for those that want to get into the weeds of that. But he went to Wake, had a lot of success at Wake. Obviously, was with Lauder, and he comes now in an organization where the thing about the Reds this season that, as much as I do think that there's not, clear-cut elite players in a lot of spots, I think that what they lack in an elite level, certain situations and certain spots, they gain in depth. They do. So, it'll be interesting to see. More importantly, maybe the most interesting thing I am to see in Tito is how much patience you have with certain guys. How much leeway are you going to give to certain guys? Like, let's just say, and I'll throw out a name, not to pick on Andrew Abbott, but if Andrew Abbott makes the rotation, right? And let's just say he struggles, though, for the first 3 or 4 starts. I don't know how much cushion these guys are going to get to get 6, 7, 8, 9 starts if there are other guys in AAA that clearly just maybe barely didn't make break camp, and all of a sudden they're still having some success at AAA. That is the biggest question mark, because more times than not, Nick and Craig, I think, big league thing is always to, hey, just it's 162 games. Let's let this thing kind of pan out. We don't want to get too high or get too low. We don't want to start pulling guys out of the lineup too early, and because then we'll miss when they get hot. There are certain positions that I just don't know how much that leeway will be, and I'm curious to see what you think about that. I mean, how many guys outside of Hunter Green and Singer, I guess, how many guys are even going to get a leash, if you want to call it that?
I think Lodolo has a longer leash. I think Lodolo and Green and Singer have pretty long leashes. I think, Green's not going to go anywhere, and neither is Singer. But I think Lodolo, I don't know. I think Lodolo's shown enough upside, even, though it's been scattered to be there. I think Abbott, I could see being a potential. There's also the whole service time thing with Rhett Lauder that I know we probably don't want to talk about. But if the Reds hold Lauder down for I think 5 weeks, they gain an extra year of service time. So if everyone's healthy, you could definitely make a decision to do that, and it makes sense because you also have to factor in Rhett Lauder only threw 138 innings combined last year. So if you start him in AAA, you could have him, start once a week for the first month of the season, 4 innings or something, really ease him in, really limit those innings. because if you have him start the year and you limit his innings late in the year, you can't really demote him and you can't gain that year back. So I think that's a possibility. I don't think the Reds have said anywhere about where Burns is going to start yet, unless I've missed something. But I think he's at least starting at Double-A. I think there's a possibility he starts at Triple-A. Paul Skeens started at Triple-A. I mean, this guy was picked one pick below Paul Skeens, and wasn't that far off of the college pedigree as Skeens was. So I think he's at least starting at Chattanooga. I think there's a chance he starts at Louisville. Again, I think there's a possibility. It all depends really how he looks in spring training. Obviously, if he goes out and gets rocked in his spring training games, okay, he's probably going to be quite a ways away. But if he comes out and looks dominant, I think he could absolutely be on the fast track.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember we're recording this before we see a single pitch out of any of these guys for spring training. I mean, all we've seen is some clips here and there from the Red social team in Goodyear, Arizona. Like, they haven't thrown a single pitch in any sort of game situation yet. I mean, I'm just basing this based on what we saw last year and based on what we've heard over the course of the offseason from different people who know a lot more about baseball than I do. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know all of the details about Chase Burns' development and what he's been working on this offseason and all of these things. But what I do know is that there's a lot of people who thought that he was one of those guys similar to Mike Leake many years ago, who probably, if the Reds really needed him, could have been ready to pitch in the major leagues as soon as last year. Now, luckily, the Reds weren't in a position where they felt the need to do that. But I do believe that there's a world where Chase Burns begins this year either in Double-A for sure. I don't think there's any world where he starts in Single-A, potentially in Triple-A. And he is potentially the first or second guy called up to join this rotation if and when there's a need in that spot. Now, Rhett Lauder obviously has that fast track as well. He's thrown very well in his appearances, but the truth of the matter is that the Reds have flexibility to be able to make it work in whatever it is that they decide to do. Nick Martinez and Graham Ashcraft give them that flexibility, and this spring training will give us a lot of insight into how they view those two arms specifically, because there's a lot of speculation going on about Graham Ashcraft moving to the bullpen and where he fits in long-term. Nick Martinez obviously was a flex guy last year, and where does he fit in long-term? You're paying him $21 million, but is he more beneficial to you in the bullpen or in the starting rotation? I don't think you can worry about what you're paying him. I think you have to focus on where can he help this team the most. And depending on how things go, that may change not only based on his performance, but based on others' performances as well.
The only thing I was going to add really quickly, and I don't have enough, maybe Nick or Craig, basically the baseballs that they had used in Double-A, the experimental baseballs that were closer to the Japanese League baseballs, that how much of that makes a difference, I don't know, but we obviously had seen there's some bit of difference that comes from some of the metrics that we had seen, that guys that use the balls that didn't use them. Maybe there's, I guess I'm saying maybe there's a reason if they're using the experimental baseball still in Double-A for that short time frame. Maybe there's a chance that they would keep him in Dayton just to let him get his feet wet and have some success before you just throw him into a league that's using experimental baseballs for his first professional debut. Do I think it's a big deal in the course of history? No, I don't. But I'm just throwing out caveat reasons as to why you might want to use Burns in Single-A just to get his feet wet for maybe a month, call it 3 or 4 starts, and then let him go and move on from there. So Burns could make camp too. Like, that's the crazy thing about all this. I don't know. I really don't. I don't think any of us know. In fact, I know that no one knows really, even in the Reds organization. I'm sure that they have preconceived notions of what they're going to do or where they're going to go. But, I'd be hard pressed to believe that they thought that Mike Leake was going to break camp when he broke camp, but he just forced them to. And there's a chance that Lauder could force them to, and there's a chance that Burns could force them to, depending on how the spring goes, right? I mean, I know that we've always said, and I continue to believe it, you can't put a lot of stock in spring training, but it's almost like, in my opinion, if you have a good track record, you can do no wrong. If you have no track record at all, though, you have an opportunity to make headway. And we'll see. We'll see ultimately what they end up doing, but there's depth there. And my hope with this perceived depth that I call it, because I really don't want to jinx this thing, because we've done this before and we said, oh my gosh, we got so many pitchers. and then we had nobody by the middle of the season. My hope is that we don't get in a situation where somebody gets off to a really slow start, and then we have to make a quick decision, and we bring someone else in, and then they're trying to get their feet wet, and it kind of snowballs into between, let's say, Andrew Abbott and I don't know, we'll say Chase Burns because we've been using him. Between those two guys, they're 0-6 with a 5.1 ERA, just because they split 8 starts between the two of them. We'll see. I hope that doesn't happen, but it is a weird situation the Reds find themselves in, because I just don't know what they're going to do when it comes to kind of durability and kind of a leash, because I don't know. We just don't have that many established guys that are probably going to be on the back end. Would you consider Andrew Abbott established? I mean, that's
borderline. I mean, he's established, but I also like he has all 3 options, and he has had some peripheral numbers that give you concern that it could come back to bite him. Could's the key word there. So that's why it might not be it's not fair to Andrew Abbott, but if you are really trying to do everything you can to win in 2025, if you see some real signs with Abbott of some regression, of some things he's got to fix, of things catching up to him, you might have to be aggressive, and that's why I just think it's a possibility that he could get demoted at some point this year. I mean, no one thought Graham Ashcraft would end up in that boat. I mean, Graham Ashcraft had pitched 2 years in the big leagues, had some injuries, but he never got demoted. And then out of nowhere, he struggled and got demoted last year. And, not saying that could happen that will happen with Abbott, but it certainly could.
Well, the thing with Abbott that we've seen the last 2 years is, as the year goes on, Abbott wears down. So the question for me isn't necessarily is he established. I think he's established in his role in this rotation. The question for me is, what do the Reds do to try and mitigate that late season decline? Does that mean that they look at a 6-man rotation, which Nick has thrown out in the past as an option? Does it mean that they look at, mid-year demotion or some other way to mitigate those innings pitched? Does it mean that he starts in AAA to try and kind of reduce the amount of pitches that he throws early in the season so that he's fresh later in the season? I don't know, but what I do know is that his ERA in August for his career is 5.84, and that his career in September and October ERA is 6.1. Every other month of the year, he's below 3.5. So there's got to be something said for that late season decline for Andrew Abbott, and it's going to be up to Francona to figure out how exactly they mitigate that. It may just be, quite frankly, that they just wear him down early on in the year, knowing that they have Lauder and Burns and others waiting to be able to replace him when the late year decline starts. I don't know. All of those are options, but I do think that at the bare minimum, you have to feel good about being able to throw Andrew Abbott out there early in the season, because he's shown, especially early in the year, 3.27, 3.3, 2.4 ERA in June, 3.3 in July. Like, the guy has been able to throw and throw well for the first 3 quarters of a season for the past 2 years. Now it's just a matter of how do we kind of build him up to be able to last an entire season.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I'm not trying to poke too much fun here. You got a guy like David Cohn, who had a lot of success in the big leagues, but I would prefer Andrew Abbott to look a little closer to the Rhett Lauders of the world than Gapper, and I mean, at some point that could be some of the reason why you have some struggle towards the end of the season, is that you just, the travel and the wear and tear on your body catches up to you. But at the same time, Hunter Green, you probably couldn't be any better of an athlete than Hunter Green. And to be fair, he's had, some struggle to stay on the field, if you want to call it that, or on the mound for an entirety of a season. So it's a thing that we have to bring up. It's not fun, but the injuries, the injury bug, where that goes, it obviously played a humongous role in what felt like last year. And we never even ever got we never even got a chance, it felt like, to get what we thought we were going to have going into spring training at any point during the regular season. And again, this is easy to say, but I think that by far, that is the biggest thing that we're all going to be paying attention to in spring training is, can these guys have consistent at bats? Can they go play in the field? And can they be healthy when it's time to play opening day? And I know TJ Friedel has said in the past that he can't turn it off. Somebody better figure that out for him, okay? Because I'm going to tell you right now, you want to see a toxic trace rant? If that son of a gun decides he's going to dive full-fledged into a wall in Arizona or do some crazy shit because he thinks he's got to play full hell-bent board like it's Game 7 of the World Series, we got to have a discussion and a talk about having a little bit of an idea when you're out there. You know, I'm not saying you loaf. I'm not saying you don't care. But I am saying we don't need to try to save a ball in the gap with a full-fledged dive to make sure some guy picking up garbage in 3 weeks doesn't get a triple. You know, that's what I do hope. Now,
well, somewhat along those lines, but more so along the lines of what we were talking about before. One of the things that I thought was interesting today, and maybe you guys picked up on it, maybe you didn't, is in the videos of the pitchers today, they're wearing workload monitors. I didn't know what they were at first, but they were wearing these black bands around their forearms. And what I found out later through X.com is that they're workload monitors. So essentially it's doing a whole bunch of reading based on things that I'm not going to begin to act like I understand. There's a really cool video out there that our friend Redson4 tweeted out about Nick Martinez and his use of the pulse machine is what he called it. But basically it's a workload monitor. And so them wearing that in spring training is the first time I remember seeing that during spring training. So it's interesting to kind of think about the focus that they're putting on that, understanding the depth that they have. They still want to make sure that they're managing the workload of all of their pitchers throughout this spring and building them up the proper way, rather than just kind of going based on, hey, how you feeling today, putting science behind it and saying, hey, here's what we did today. Here's how we're working up to the next level. I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it, to go check it out. Lance Brozdowski at Lance Bros on X.com tweeted it out and pointed it out. But definitely an interesting wrinkle, I guess, to this spring training that I hadn't seen them do before.
Some workload monitors.
I
might have to get those. I might have to get those for the office just so I can check in on those, because I'm pretty sure that they probably, I'd be wondering, like, are these things even working? Did someone turn on the workload monitors? And then the company would be like, yeah, no, they're working. They're working. But I didn't know. Doesn't show anything. But anyway, I guess you guys have had this discussion throughout the entire offseason, but as we get closer, obviously, to camp actually starting, pitchers and catching reporting, clearly the main focus is going to be on the pitchers. But I think one thing that we had a huge question marks going into last spring about is the other side of that, which is the catching. And Stevenson fortunately had a bounce back type season. I think he kind of, to a certain extent, I don't think he alleviated all doubt, but he alleviated some doubt, like, hey, this guy could be a bona fide, player, or a catcher, I should say, for a legitimate playoff team. The fact that he has another competent backup, because we also felt like Luke Maile, and I'm not trying to throw shade at Luke Maile. Luke Maile had a good year, and we felt good about the fact that we had a competent backup. How much do you think the catching position is going to rear its head again in an area that we feel like we kind of are lacking in that department, or do you feel good about the state of the business that is catching?
I hope it's not a problem. When you trade Fernando Cruz for a bona fide backup catcher, you hope that was you solved any issues with that. I do expect. I doubt Stevenson is better than he was in 2024. I mean, he was a 3-win player, 112 WRC plus. Most importantly, played in 138 games. I think it's probably unrealistic to expect him to be better than that. I don't expect him to regress a ton, but yeah, I mean, that's where you hope that Trevino, and I know Craig mentioned it a lot, but I think that the ability just to keep Stevenson fresh is maybe the best part of the Trevino signing. So I don't know. I'm not down on Stevenson. It just depends on what your expectation. If your expectation that Stevenson's a legitimate top of the order hitter, I don't think he's that. I think he's probably a 6-7 hitting catcher that's really solid, maybe fringe all-star if things go well. that's kind of where my expectations are for him. But yeah, I mean, Trevino, I mean, you don't not going to get a better backup catcher than him. Greg, you're muted.
I talked at length on this. Obviously, I called Trevino what I said. Ultimately, I think will pan out to be the best signing or the best acquisition of the offseason. Nick mentioned it, but Tyler Stevenson started 120 games behind the dish last year. Luke Maile, in the games that he started, the Reds had a winning percentage of like 200. So I think right off the bat, again, no disrespect to Luke Maile, he did what he was expected to do, but I think Jose Trevino just brings that to a whole nother level and kind of gives you some flexibility with Tyler Stevenson, allow him to DH some games, give him some time off and not have to worry about regression, all of these things. And then the other piece of it that we really haven't talked a whole lot about is that, last year you had, not only did you have Luke Maile, but you had guys like Eric Yang have to come up and catch. This year, not only do you have Tyler Stevenson, you have Jose Trevino, you also have Austin Wynns as a non-roster invitee who's projected to start at AAA. The Reds reportedly feel pretty good about Michael Troutwine's future as a catcher in this organization as well. I don't know so much about that, but he's another option that if you have to go down to AAA, he's been there for long enough that you would hope that he'd be able to fill in at least on a short-term basis to be able to step in that situation and not have to go to guys like Eric Yang like you did in 2024. So in general, yes, I like what Jose Trevino brings. And again, the steps that we saw Tyler Stevenson make defensively last offseason, I think Jose Trevino can take that yet to another level with Tyler Stevenson kind of as a mentor, helping him grow his game even more defensively going into 2025.
Yeah, it's hard to say what Trevino's impact is going to be for Stevenson. Maybe there's something there. Maybe there's not. I know everyone always points to Joey Votto and Will Benson's relationship. And, it's like if Joey Votto was back with the Reds, Will Benson would be, basically Barry Bonds. I'm not going to go that far, obviously, with this whole comparison of how much guys help other guys in the major leagues. Let's face it, these guys have been playing baseball since they were 5, 6, 7 years old. They're professional athletes. They probably can only do so much once you get there with what you got. But having said that, I thought that the trade, with Cruz and Trevino is it's kind of the same type of risk on both parties. You got aging players. There's a cliff there somewhere. I don't know when the cliff exists for either one. We thought that probably was the case for Cruz at some point, and he kind of hit a little bit of a dry spell, we can be honest, last season. But for the most part, and what he did for this team, I don't think can go understated. I do have a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth that you got a guy like Fernando Cruz that's not going to be there, because I thought we relied on him just an unbelievable amount last season. And I know the season didn't go as well as we'd hoped for it to go, but we relied on him so much at the beginning of the year that it's like he was that alpha dog that we turned to, and he got the job done more times than not. Who do we replace him with? I guess it's easier said than done, but I also think there's a chance that could be Graham Ashcraft deep down. It's like Graham Ashcraft kind of has that Fernando Cruz-esque to him. Now, I know he doesn't have the splitter, et cetera, but point is I'm hopeful that Trevino's cliff doesn't exist this year, and I'm not rooting against Fernando Cruz, but I am hopeful that Fernando Cruz doesn't become another, basically all-star. Rolf's coming in here as always, dropping dollars, $20, super chat. He said, we have bigger fish to fry. Let's talk through this Kendrick Lamar versus Drake beef. Is it bigger than Amir Garrett's beef with the Pittsburgh Pirates? I mean, he fought the whole team. Yeah, listen, this is where the show can go off the rails from time to time because Rolf comes in and throws these crazy questions out. I personally watched the halftime show. I also openly admit, guys, that I know as soon as the halftime show's over, it doesn't matter who does the show. You can guarantee on X.com or on Facebook, there will be many people saying it's the worst halftime show of all time. So I don't use that as my barometer, but I will openly admit as I watched that, I was having a hard time coming up with what the lyrics were. I couldn't make them out. I was like, I'm not sure what's being said to me right now, but I did hear A minor, and I do understand the reference there. Is that a big beef? I don't know. I just know they're both rich. They're both successful. They're both okay. I don't know if you can say that's the same for the other two. So I would say the bigger beef should be between the guys that are fighting to stay relevant. And that would be probably Amir Garrett and the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's my answer.
I don't know if Amir Garrett really necessarily was like the Pirates. I think he just hated the world because remember he like got into fights with the Cubs too. So I don't necessarily think it was just this big rivalry with Pittsburgh. I think it was just he tended to get a little fired up on the baseball diamond. So I'm gonna go with Lamar and Mr. Drake's rivalry beef a little deeper, just because I think Garrett just hated the world.
Mr. Drake. I like that reference, Nick. Look, there's nothing more surprising to me than Trace Fowler not knowing the details of the beef between Kendrick Lamar and Aubrey. But this is a Red show, so clearly the bigger beef is Amir Garrett with the Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, Kendrick and Lamar is a one-on-one fight. Amir Garrett went and took on all 25 of the Pirates, plus Clint Hurdle, who deserved every bit of what he got. David Bell came running out of the dugout after he had already been kicked out of the game. So clearly the beef is there with the Pirates. Amir Garrett is that man, I think, as he said after I'm that guy, as he flexed on him as he got pulled away from the heat. But I think the most important thing of this whole thing, Rolf, is that since you brought it up, if Chatterbox gets lumped into that lawsuit with Drake, we're going to be relying on you to be covering our legal fees. So since you brought it up, it's only fair that you cover those.
Was that the Puig when Puig got traded? Was that the same fight?
There was a lot of fights that year. Fight. No, because wasn't that fight the one where that was ketchup versus mustard in the game, and Pittsburgh was wearing their like yellow ugly City Connects? I feel like I remember Amir Garrett charging the Pirates when they were wearing black. So no promises, but I think it was different.
The 2019 season was wild. I mean, there was so many things that happened that year. That was the most interesting 77 win team in the history of baseball. I mean, they had the awesome uniforms that they rolled out every other weekend. That was just really cool and fascinating. Puig was like just this. I've never been a more popular player that only played for a team for 3 months than Puig was. Dietrich, they were fighting every other day. Clint Hurdle, the ultimate D-bag of the sport. I gotta say, so I got some on my chest about Clint Hurdle. Okay, so Clint Hurdle's the absolute worst human being on the face of this earth. You know what this guy's doing now? He's putting inspirational quotes up on Twitter. Clint Hurdle, check this out. I mean, of all the people on this planet that should be putting inspirational quotes out there, Clint Hurdle is not in the top 1.5 billion. Unreal.
You're not a fan of Clint Hurdle?
No.
I couldn't tell. They're both irrelevant. Let's be honest. I mean, at least Kendrick Lamar and Drake have some relevancy to them. We could walk around the Super Bowl media days and just be like, hey, what do you think is a bigger beef, the Pittsburgh Pirates and Amir Garrett, or Kendrick Lamar and Drake? And I think 99.9% of the people are going to ask who the other two are. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the Pittsburgh Pirates. We haven't had nearly as much success. We're about the same right now, I must admit. Kurt, he's out on my YouTube. Listen, here's the thing: as you get older, I've come to realize everyone just has all your logins too. It's like, oh, I changed my Netflix login. Today I get a notification on my iPad, and it's like, you have a suspicious login from this thing. Is it you? I'm like, no, that's not me. I don't know. I started asking all the people I knew. I got all the people I could think of that had my login. I asked if they. Nope, that wasn't me. Nope, that was. I was like, I got a hit. No, it wasn't me. Sure enough, somebody out of the blues like, hey, I was like, oh, you got the login too. Sure. So yeah, I mean, just send me it's free. It's no big deal. I don't pay for it or anything like that. I just send it over. I'll take care of it. Thanks, Curtis. That's my brother.
You got to get the free Netflix through T-Mobile.
Yeah, who knows, man? Or you could just go, I don't know. There's a lot of places you can get to TV channels. I'm not going to get us in trouble here, but I'm just saying there's a lot of places you can find TV channels for free. Now, they might not be the most quality of streams, but they do exist. That's as far as I can go.
Unfortunately, Trace, the one that I sent you from our friends across the pond is no
right.
longer.
Well, that's probably because they're in a war with Ukraine as we speak. If I had to guess, those towers probably got blown up at some point. My guess. I'm just saying. I don't know. Or maybe it was Ukrainian. I don't know. I do know one thing. It was one language that was on that website, and it wasn't American. English is what we'll call it. Or even Great Britain English. Either English. Doesn't matter. All right. Back to Reds baseball.
My illegal cable. I'm hoping that this year, since Nick cut the cable himself, that we won't have to pause for nearly as much. Last year, I feel like anytime we did the show, Nick had to pause his TV for like 20 seconds to catch up with me. Right. Now that Nick actually cut the cable and doesn't have direct TV.
Well, I don't know. Well, I'll be using MLB TV, and the problem is MLB TV was ahead of direct TV. So
here we go.
Yeah, who knows? Also, do you think the Reds are going to do another reversal maybe before opening day? Are we going to go back to our own streaming service and then maybe go back to FanDuel and then go back? I mean, we've done that. Are we doing big league negotiations down there at Great American Ballpark, or is this just genuinely nobody knows what the hell's going on?
I mean, saying you're putting out a whole announcement that you're going with MLB producing your games. I mean, that's a pretty tough negotiation. I mean, someone got in there and said, "Hey, boys, we need to make some money here." So yeah, shout out to them.
I don't know what the hell's going on with the TV thing. And listen, like openly, transparently, I have no clue the finances that are going to exist when it comes to whether or not you join an MLB kind of directed television package, or if you go with the FanDuel Sports Network, I think is what they call it now. Adrian has got a question for you, Nick.
Yeah, he's been wanting me to ask this. So, Collier, a dark horse to be called up before September. I think he's a first baseman. He played a lot of first base last year. No, he didn't. Yeah, he played first base last year. I think it's possible. I'm not going to put it probable. I mean, Collier, when he was at his best, like he had 2 months last year where he was incredible. I mean, he hit everything. But then he also had some months where he was, really, really bad. I mean, that comes with being one of the youngest players in the Midwest League. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it's a possibility. It's hard to predict. Will this guy have his big breakout year this year or not? I think it's going to come. I think Cam Collier should be the Reds. I want to put Collier ahead of Lauder on the prospect list, but I'll say number 3. I'll put him behind Lauder and Burns. But I think he should be that high. I think he should be ahead of Arroyo. I don't see any offensive player that has anywhere close to the ceiling of Collier. I have him way ahead of Sal Stewart, and I know I'm on an island there. But yeah, I'm big on Collier. I just think it would have to be a lot of things go right for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he played first base, but he definitely played third base. And I mean, ultimately, if you're able to play an infield position, first base. I'm not saying I will say this about first base. I don't think it's as easy as everyone makes it out to be. A good defensive first baseman is pretty invaluable. It's a lot of errors you can save at first base, things that, if you have a good first baseman, it's kind of like the pick that they saved in the third inning to get the third out. When you went 1, 2, 3, nobody remembers. It's not really a big stat that people are going to point to, but it can make a difference. So I don't want to downplay first base, but I'm not going to sit here and act like if Cam Collier doesn't play first base for, a couple months, he can't get the hang of it.
Yeah, he didn't play first base. They rotated. That's what he played, third base and DH. So he would rotate between third base and DH. Sal Stewart would play third base when Collier was DHing, would play second base when Collier was playing third base. So yeah, he hasn't played first base yet, but it seemed like a very inevitable thing that he would end up at first base at some point.
Are you just saying he looks like a first baseman?
He looks like a first baseman, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, he looks like a big power hitter.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Craig, anything to add?
No.
All right. Rolf coming in again says off the rails. Ha, 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 ha. My apologies to the fellow C-Box viewers. Let's get back on the saddle. give me your starting rotation for opening day 25. We kind of already got to this a little bit.
This might be the least debatable topic the entire night, if we're being honest. I think it's like,
well,
barring injury and everything else, I think it's pretty close to locked in. I mean, you can question the order a little bit if you want, but Hunter Green's your opening day starter. I don't think there's any question there. I slot Brady Singer in as my number 2. I think Andrew Abbott's the 3, and then give me a toss-up between Martinez and Lodolo being my 4 and 5. I'm going to say that Lodolo ends up being my 4 and Nick Martinez ends up being my 5, but somewhere around that, those are my 5 starters.
I would say the only caveat to that is I do think that there is a semblance of a chance that if Lodolo's healthy and he looks good and Andrew Abbott doesn't look good, there's a chance they flop him out. I do. And that doesn't mean I'm not sold on Andrew Abbott. I don't want people to think that I don't think he can be successful. He's already shown that he has the capabilities of being a successful big league starter at times. I just have this weird suspicion that he kind of reminds me of the Graham Ashcraft of old, where you kind of have these spurts of a roller coaster. And I just wonder if he's ever going to be able to stay consistent enough to be a guaranteed spot in the rotation. The fact that you have him 3rd is scary, I guess, because I'm saying he might not make it and you have him 3rd. But at the same time, I think it goes to the point that I made at the very beginning, which is there's a lot of depth there. I don't think there's not a lot of, discrepancy between 3 through 7. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know.
I think earlier in the offseason, I said I thought that Martinez was starting the bullpen if everyone was healthy, but the more this has gone on and I started to, I don't know who mentioned the idea of gaining that extra year of service time with Louder. So I think if everyone's healthy, I don't think that's going to happen. I think someone gets hurt. It always happens. I think it's Green. I think Lodolo starts the second game. I think the Reds are going to maybe put him in that spot more as like a vote of confidence. I think he probably goes Singer, then Abbott and Martinez. I think Martinez, if everyone's healthy, starts the year. I think probably just about no matter what, because if someone's hurt, he's still going to be in the rotation. I think Martinez will start in the rotation, and then I think he's going to bounce back multiple times. Now, if they get to camp in the bullpens like a disaster, they might put Louder on the opening day roster and put Martinez in the bullpen because they need someone that can kind of eat innings. But I think it'd be a creative bullpen role for him early in the year. But the one thing is there is an off day every single day in April, barring rainouts, which there's always a lot of rainouts in April, which could mess everything up. There is an off day every week. So the Reds can get kind of cute and manipulative with their rotation in the first month of the season if rain kind of allows for it.
Martinez is a tricky one.
Do you think that this is Lodolo's like last year to get to 25 to 30 starts before they have to worry about doing something else with him if he gets hurt again?
I don't really know what else you could do.
Yeah. What do you do with them?
You just hope a guy like Lodolo, I mean, it's the narrative around him, and it's not his fault, but it's earned. But I mean, there's been a lot of pitchers that just had battled injury after injury after injury and looked like they could never get on track. And then all of a sudden, they stay healthy for whatever reason. Zach Wheeler's the one that comes to mind to me. Maybe the best like value free agent signing for a guy that was really good. Phillies only got him for like $100 million. And it was simply because he was hurt all the time. It could happen. Who knows what makes, it happen for guys. But I have all the hope because outside of Hunter Green, I don't think there's anyone else, and maybe Chase Burns. There's no one that has anywhere close to the ceiling that Lodolo has. And so I hope he can stay healthy, but it's just fortunately such a big if at this point.
I think there's a chance that maybe we just take Lodolo and put him in as the opening day starter to boost his confidence, and then also at the same time piss off Hunter Green again, because it seemed to work out. Honestly, if we can piss off Hunter Green like the way we did last year, hey man, I'm obviously joking, but
I think Nick Martinez might be your opening day starter.
Oh yeah,
justify that money. Listen. I know you guys don't like this. I know Nick specifically. I should say. I don't know about Craig. I know he doesn't like this when I say this. But I do think that the money is going to play a factor in the way that Nick Martinez is handled. I'm not saying it should. I'm not saying that's the way it should be, Nick. I'm not trying to say that that's how you're supposed to do it. I'm just saying this is real life, and they're going to look at how much money Nick Martinez is making, and they're going to try to find a way to make him as valuable as they can in my mind. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, by God, I'm happy about it. But if Nick Martinez's best role this entire season is to be a kind of a guy out of the bullpen that, you know, early in the game, if you can get him out there in a spot where he can throw 2, 3, 4 innings and keep you in the game, that's fine. I think that's what he should be used for. And then I'd also say he can still be a good setup kind of guy, to where his value still makes sense for what you paid him. The concern I have is it's like you don't traditionally pay a guy like that and then just say, oh, he's just going to be in the bullpen somewhere with the size of market that we are.
Wasn't this the exact same conversation we had this time last year? Like, Reds are paying Nick Martinez $14 million. Like, he's getting paid to start. He's only going to start. And then that was not how he was used. I mean,
no, we didn't say that. We didn't say that. I don't believe we said that.
There was a lot of people that said that. I don't remember who else said that.
I said, if I remember right, I know for a fact, I said that the way that David Bell spoke about Nick Martinez, he did not speak of him in a way that made me feel like he was meant to be a starter. I remember last year, David Bell very often saying, you know, hey, we really like the way that Nick can be kind of a guy that's been proven out of the bullpen, but also if he could start, you know, he could work there as well. I don't think that was ever the plan. And then obviously they were forced to make him start because of the way that the injury bug happened. But I don't think that's how it was last year. This year, I don't know. Tito's probably not going to give a shit. Let's be honest. Like if we're being honest with Tito, I'm not trying to be overly pessimistic about like the way that he can behave, but he can do whatever he wants. Like he genuinely can. And he's at a point in his career where he probably shouldn't give a shit what anybody else thinks anyways. So we don't have to worry about that. Like David Bell, you could argue David Bell would worry about what management thought or maybe what ownership thought about certain situations, this, that, and the next. Tito's kind of the old man that just sits on the porch in the rocking chair that's going to say whatever the hell he wants to say. And if it offends you and pisses you off, he really doesn't give a shit. There's no filter. So maybe I'm wrong about Tito, but I suspect he's going to do whatever he wants with Nick Martinez. I just wonder if it's got to do with money and that's where they're going to try to push it to start. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think I think he starts in the rotation, but I think he'll bounce back probably several times in different roles, unless he starts in the rotation and just is absolutely dominant and there's no way you can take him out. I mean, that's a possibility too. But if he's kind of the Nick Martinez that we had last year, where you know there was kind of some mixed bags at times, then I think you'll see him do both.
Much higher likelihood that Nick Martinez does what if we make the postseason?
Pitches in the bullpen, because that means the other guys were really healthy.
That's what I'm thinking too. I agree with that 100%. But again, just wonder if that's the mindset that the Reds have at the beginning. We'll see. I don't know. Pitchers and catchers. Anything else that we want to cover?
Well, one interesting storyline that we haven't really talked about was Nick Krall said there's only 2 set positions, catcher and shortstop. Go ahead to spring training. I mean, that's kind of a wild quote. I mean, I think when you look at the Reds roster, it's not like the 2022 Reds where you're really like, there's a lot of proven MLB players on this roster, but that's pretty wild to me. I think Friedel is at least starting every day against right-handed pitching. I think Fraley's starting every day against right-handed pitching in center and right. But the biggest question for me is when he said that, does that mean, was he just saying that because of Matt McLain's not playing all year last year? Or was he saying that because they have creative plans for Matt McLain?
Well, not only do you have Matt McLain and the potential to be creative there based on some reports, but you've also got guys like Gavin Lux who can play multiple positions. Spencer Steer, who hasn't been great at every position, but has played multiple positions. You've got the flexibility this year that if guys aren't living up to the potential, that you can give them breathers here and there. And so for me, it may not be so much about who's penciled in to be your everyday or most day starter as much as it is about we've got guys who can play multiple positions. And if you can't play your position up to the level that we need you to, we're not going to be afraid to make a change like we have been in years past because we haven't had somebody to slot in. There's so many guys on this roster who can play multiple positions, or that you hope can play multiple positions, along with multiple guys that you can DH, that it kind of gives Tito the flexibility to figure out, okay, well, I'm not going to guarantee that you CES are going to start at first base, or that you, Jamer Candelario, are going to start at third, or anybody else. At this point, you've got to compete for your spot and you've got to compete for your role. And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about this offseason, is that not only are there competitions amongst positions, but there's competitions amongst roles and what you individually are going to fill in for this team.
I think it's a clearly an indicator of position flexibility within this baseball team, and also a very clear kind of sobering moment that is, we don't have many players that we feel that we know what we have. And that can be sobering from the standpoint of that's, and like, if we're going to get real for a second on the show, that's why the Reds are projected to win what they were supposed to win. You know, like, you can get all upset at the sports books for having them penciled in at whatever 77.5 or 78.5 wins and be like, well, how in the world are they going to do that? It's like, well, it's because TJ Friedl did not play very well at the end of last season. Like, and there's no guarantee that he ever comes back and plays the way that he did in 2023. And the other thing too is, like, you know, we don't 100% know if Gavin is going to be able to play for a full season without getting injured. We don't know if McLean is going to be able to do that. We have no clue what we have in Marte. We're obviously going to rely on Santiago Espinal, who struggled mightily for a good stretch of the season last season. And to be fair to Santiago, maybe it was because he was, you know, not in a role that he was comfortable with, and he was always kind of bounced around. And, you know, I'm not trying to blame David Bell for his struggles, but point is like, we just have to go into spring training realizing that this is probably going to be a muddy mess for a minute. And even throughout, maybe I would hopefully at the beginning of the season, it might be a muddy mess for a minute. And we just need to survive in advance. That's what I'm hoping to do as a Reds fan. It's like, can we survive in advance, you know, basically through May? Because if you remember last season, the real issue was, yeah, we had all these injuries and we had some inconsistent play at times, but the real issue we had was May. I mean, you can't dig yourself that big of a hole and expect yourself to be able to get out of it. And the Reds did that to themselves last season. And we'll find ourselves in a very familiar spot this season, which is who goes where and what do we have? And, you know, I'm hopeful that comment that he made is more of an indicator of, we don't believe, it's not that we don't believe in Matt McLean or we don't believe in, you know, X, Y, Z. It's that if TJ Friedl struggles, Matt McLean might play center field if he has to, or Gavin Lux has to go to a corner spot in the outfield, or whatever it may be. And I know people are going to think I'm crazy, but like, and I'm crazy for saying this because Nick will be excited, but like, Will Benson gets really hot. I'm not going to put my life on the line and say Will Benson isn't going to be a better player than, you know, a Jake Fraley or a Spencer Steer. And that's not a knock on those guys. I'm just saying, like, we genuinely have seen Will Benson be one of the best outfielders in baseball for a pretty decent amount of time. We've also seen him be the absolute worst. I don't know where he stands. I also don't know where 90% of these guys stand, and we just all have to embrace that. And if you don't want to embrace that, then I would just say that's fine, but you can't come into the season with expectations that it's going to go exactly according to plan, because we know that's not going to be the case. And I think for as invested as we all are on this show about, you know, what the roster looks like and what can happen, I think we genuinely would be lying if any of us sat here and said, this is exactly the way they should do it, because we just don't have the data yet to say that that's what we should do.
Yeah, I don't know what positions Gavin Lux can play well. And that's the biggest piece of the puzzle that kind of puts everything else into place. Like, if you feel like Gavin Lux is significantly better at second base than anywhere else, then maybe you should consider moving McLean to a different position more. But if Gavin Lux can like play third base really well, I think it's pretty easy to slot him there. But it's gonna be fascinating. It's like what these spring training lineups are gonna look like. I'm gonna be locked into Twitter to see when those get posted, to see where are guys at, just because I don't remember. I remember a lot of years with a lot of position battles, but I don't remember a year where I didn't know what position guys are going to be playing, and that's going to make spring training, I guess, a whole lot more interesting. But there's one narrative that's been going around that's kind of bugged me all off season about Terry Francona. Like, Francona's not going to platoon guys. That is, you never watch the Cleveland Indians with Francona, because he platooned all three outfielders when they went to the World Series. So like, he's going to platoon, he's going to mix and match a lot. There's not really going to be a change in philosophy there, I don't believe, at all this year. In fact, there might be more platoons, because the Reds have even more platoon type players with Hayes and Lux. And so if you think platoon is going away, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, they're going to have to platoon. I sure as hell hope that we don't have Jake Fraley and Will Benson facing left-handed hitters. I mean,
I hope I don't have Austin Hayes getting 300 at bats against a right-handed pitcher either. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, Spencer Steer, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. He could be an average baseball player in major leagues, or he could be below average or above. I don't know. I don't want. I put a lot of expectations on Spencer Steer. If you say he could be a borderline all-star, I think that's being very unfair to him. But I will say this about Spencer Steer that we always kind of look over with him is he has been durable. He has been very durable. And if your best ability is availability, which is the cliche term that we all use, we've got to give him more credit for that, because out of all these guys that we do love, CES, McLean, I'll even say Marte at times. Obviously, we were in love with Marte at one time. Believe it or not, this fan base did love Marte. And TJ Friedel in center. They've not been that. So kudos to Steer for that. But anything else, Craig, you got anything?
It is interesting. I mean, you've got only 3 lefties on this team. You do have Jamer Candelario as a switch hitter, but I mean, TJ Friedel, Jake Fraley, and Gavin Lux, your only projected left-handed hitters on your opening day roster, according to Fangraphs. Will Benson starting obviously at AAA, according to them. So it'll be interesting, not only from a platoon standpoint, but from a bench management standpoint, how they work through that. One of the things that I feel like David Bell struggled with is early in-game changes that left him with no counter punch later on in the game. And so it'll be interesting to see how Tito manages that, because if in this world of MLB where starting pitchers go 5 innings, you can't immediately pull your one left-handed batter and not have anybody to counterpunch later, because you're going to be left with at-bats that don't really work out in the late game situation. So for me, it'll be really interesting to see how they manage that and what happens there. So I don't know what the answer is, especially if it really is just those 3. TJ Friedel obviously has good enough splits against left-handed pitching that I don't think it'll matter too much with him, but Jake Fraley and Gavin Lux and how they manage that from a platoon standpoint will be very interesting to watch throughout the season.
Rolf with another super. He said, I know this is pitchers and catchers show, but can we talk CES for a minute? To me, he is the wild card of this season. And I wonder how mad he is at the Reds over the whole wrist injury thing. I don't think he's, I don't know. I guess I don't know him, but I would suspect he's not going to be upset at the Reds. I mean, listen, let's face it. The Reds are going to have multiple doctors that these guys get an opportunity to meet with and look at. And they're also professional athletes. They have money. They can go get their own personal opinions. I guess if anything, it's a learning lesson. If you're upset at the medical staff for the Reds, I know that's going to be probably a talking point at some point during spring training, is the medical staff of the Reds. Oh my gosh, should they all be fired? I don't know. I don't know. My only thing with CES, I'll hand it off to you guys, is there's a very high ceiling there, but I also don't think the floor is very high. I do. There's a chance that he's, I don't want to say Marte bad, but there's a chance that he could put a performance together like Marte did in the second half.
I think his floor is a lot higher. I mean, you look through his minor league track record. He didn't have one season where he wasn't a great hitter in the minor leagues. So I there's no way that CES should, unless he looks completely lost in spring training, which I have a hard time believing because this guy is feasted in spring training and in AAA. So if there's one player that I feel pretty confident is going to look great if he's healthy in spring training, it's going to be CES. So I don't really think that should be a reason to put him on the roster. But I don't think he's going to do anything that would make you not put him on the roster, if that makes sense. But he has to be in the lineup. There's no player other than Elly De La Cruz that has anywhere close to the ceiling as CES in 2025 offensively. And you got to ride with him. You got to give him a chance. I'm not putting stock in 29 games last year when he was hurt, because every other game he's played in his professional career, other than the 29 games when he was hurt, he's been a great hitter.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the 3 years in the minors that he played, all 3 years he had over a 300 batting average. That doesn't just happen and then magically go away. I do think that he's a professional hitter. I think what we saw in 2024, I don't want to call it a fluke. I don't want to say that it was affected by injury. I don't know enough about what was going on with CES behind the scenes. But what I do know is that there's enough of a background to believe that that's not who he truly is. I mean, even his 2023 numbers when he played 63 games, he's still for the Reds in the majors hit 270. I think that's more of a floor number than what we saw out of him in 2024. And not to read too much into it, but in the Arizona Fall League this offseason, he hit 385. And again, that was only 32 at bats. I realize, not a ton of sample size there, but like it gives you hope that CES is past that injury and back to what you are hoping he can and should be for this team. And that is ultimately a guy that you saw in 2022 and 2023, especially at the minor league numbers. I mean, those 2 years he combined for 52 home runs. Realistically, you'd love to see CES back in that 280 to 300 range and hitting 20 to 25 home runs for this team in 2025.
Yeah, wild cards, I guess. We have more shows to do this off season, so I don't want to really burn through every single topic that we could possibly discuss. But when you go yeah, I'm just saying when you go through this long of a show and we're an hour and 16 minutes in, it's the only comment I'm going to make about it. And Marte's name hadn't even been brought up. I mean, I think he deserves more praise than that. I know exactly why nobody wants to talk about it. I know why people are pissed off about it. I understand that you don't want to give him even a semblance of hope. I can't do that. I mean, I'm not, as much as Nick Kirby might die on the hill that Will Benson has a chance, I guess I'm going to die on the hill that Noelvi Marte has a chance. I mean, I don't believe that he was as polished of a hitter because he took steroids. I cannot get on that train. I know people want to believe that because that's the narrative that they're pushing. I don't think that is true. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everyone will laugh at me and say I'm stupid for that. But we're an hour and 16, 17 minutes into the show. We've talked about almost every other player, and Marte's name is really always been at this point and the whole entire offseason for most of this fan base non-existent.
To your point about Marte, I mean, unless he was using steroids at 19 years old, I mean, in 2021, I mean, this guy had 17 home runs, 366 on base percentage in 107 games at 19 years old. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same spot as Marte as I was last year. I don't have high expectations for him for 2025, but I still have high expectations for his career. And that's kind of where I'm at with him. Like, I think he's going to be a big league player at some point. If it happens in 2025, great. I think more likely or not, he probably blossoms down the road. He's still only 23.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the same thing that we just said about CES kind of rings true for Noelvi Marte as well. Again, you just mentioned it, but you look at his years in the minor leagues. 2021, he had an OPS of 825, 2022, 829, 2023, 812. And even 2023 at the major league rank, he was 822 OPS with the Reds. So it's hard to imagine that he just all of a sudden forgot how to hit. My concern is his work ethic. And I don't know this. I don't have any real way of knowing it, But the only way that I see that you have that kind of drop off without a noticeable injury like we had with CES is, did he spend all 80 of those games basically doing nothing because he couldn't go to the facility to work out and do all the things he was supposed to do without anybody to hold him accountable? Now, we know that Terry Francona will hold him accountable, that if he doesn't show up to camp in shape and he doesn't continue to work out the way he's supposed to be, that maybe they'll hold him accountable and make sure that he's doing what he needs to do. But this is another guy who has multiple years of experience at the minor league level showing that he can hit, and to think that all of a sudden he just became a 210 hitter is just unrealistic. So another guy that I'm holding out hope for, but again, you have the flexibility with this roster to be able to make decisions for what's best for your team long-term and for this year. So if you think coming out of spring training that Marte and CES are best served to start the year at AAA because you don't need them or because they can take some time and get back into the groove of things, you can do that. If they tear through spring training and you're ready to put them on your major league roster come opening day, then you can do that. But the truth of the matter is that this team has the flexibility and the depth to not have to force them into situations that they may or may not be ready for.
All right, before we go any farther, obviously we have people that support the show that we do appreciate. DSC, Deep South Commodities. Shout out to John and his team. As we head into 2025, probably have some new faces that join on. But as always, 988, if you're ever having a situation or a life crisis, call or text 988. Get free and confidential support 24/7. The Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, always actively working to try to make sure that there's resources available if you need it. Mantherapy.org as well. Please utilize those resources. I know pretty much the vast majority of our audience. Shout out Molly and a few others, Carrie. I know that perhaps, they're, not men, but mantherapy.org for the rest of you, which is about 98% because we see the analytics. We see the numbers. Let's be honest. If you need it, it's there. And you know what? Hey, it is 2025. So, if you're a woman and, you need mantherapy.org as well, go ahead and check it out. Maybe you can learn some things that are useful in there as well. I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows? What are you guys grinning about? I don't understand. You guys want to talk about Santiago Espinal's role to really round out the entire roster this year, heading into 2025, and make sure that every offseason show is a repeat of the 2-hour premiere show that we did on pitchers and catchers reporting?
Nah, I think we could save that for
Save
later
that one.
date.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Keep something in the back pocket.
All right, so you will see a post. You will see a post more than likely here. Like I said, probably tomorrow morning and or tonight, depending on when Nick wants to put it out, that we are going to be seeking some people to join our team. And if you know somebody or you're somebody yourself that wants to do that, we'll like I said, we'll do some interviews. We'll try to find a gauge for some folks we think that our audience will enjoy. And we'll continue to try to bring the best content that we possibly can here on Chatterbox Reds. So, without further ado, and I know it's further ado or whatever the hell it is, but I'm going to say farther for the rest of my life. Without further ado, this has been Chatterbox Reds on Pitchers and Catchers Reporting. A nice hour and 22-minute premiere. Hopefully you enjoyed it, but we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.